Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and I hope all of you had a great weekend, ready for some Computer America, and everything's going well. So today on the program, no guests, we have an entire hour of computer and technology news for you, where we will be talking about a number of different things, everything from the Wells Fargo hacking that happened, or I'm sorry, not even hack. I'm so used to things going wrong because other people caused them. No, this was not a hacking. This was a quote-unquote computer glitch, and unfortunately caused people to lose their homes. So we're going to talk about how that happened, more from, some fitness tracking from the Pentagon, Android P. P, by the way, now officially stands for Android Pie. So if you were curious about the latest Android operating system, there you have it. So all that and more at computeramerica.com. And, of course, today here on the show. So a couple things before we get going, including computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything from from any links to that we talk about, any videos that we show, any articles that we mention, anything and everything can be found in one place. So it's a one-stop shop. If you are busy, if you can't get to your browser right now, then don't worry, we have you covered. Also, while you're there, be sure to check out the social media contest brought to you by Logitech, and check out the live video feed brought to you by OWC. So, I think with all that being said, why don't we go ahead and just get started with today's computer and technology news. And again, I hope all of you had a fantastic weekend. So, here we go, computer and technology news brought to you by OWC. And I think the first story we are going to do is actually with AMD. So AMD, they announced their ThreadRipper 2 series. This is their second generation ThreadRipper, and the first one, it kind of threw up the rule book on what a high-end processor could be. What a high-end consumer processor could be. And, kind of caught the incumbents by surprise. And a lot of people, they were very impressed by what Ryzen ThreadRipper by AMD actually did. So it was pretty cool to see AMD launch ThreadRipper 2 in the next couple of weeks. And we have some benchmarks. We have some numbers, and we have some, just what this is going to mean for the processor race. Because AMD has been, pushing theirs a couple of weeks ago, and they had a couple stumbles. If you're looking at this purely from a hardware solution, tech-minded, hopefully some kind of innovation coming from processors. That's not what we found with Intel and their i7s or even their i9s, but Ryzen seems to be really upping the ante. So This is an article from TechSpot. You can find it again in the show notes. But Rob Thubron talking about AMD says Threadripper 2990WX, if you were looking for a designation, is 53% faster than the Core i9-7980XE. So the Core i9-7980XE, if you know their designation, that would be their, Intel's top of the line, currently available 18-core, 36-thread processor. And so to claim that you have a 53% speed increase over that, that is, that makes it no competition. So we have benchmarks, we have how the computers were set up, and we have their workloads and how they were benchmarked. And let's go ahead and get into this. So they said that AMD looks set to launch Threadripper 2 in the coming weeks. And if you're excited to see the company's second generation workstation processors are capable of, check out these Cinebench and Signbench, Cinebench, however you say it. That is the go-to benchmarking software used, and those scores really mean a lot. So they said that preliminary performance figures show that the 32-core, 64-thread Ryzen Threadripper 2990WX processor. I really want to emphasize that number. 32-core, 64-thread. Most consumers, up until about the first time Threadripper came onto the scene, most consumers, as far as processors were concerned, you were looking at 8-core, 16-thread. That was the extent, and that's as far as Intel kind of took it. I think a couple of AMDs would run 1224, but for a couple of years there, AMD was just not competitive in the price or the speed department. But now that seems to be flipping on its head, and so 32-core, 64-thread Ryzen Threadripper 2990WX. And I guess in the same turn, where a consumer would expect to pay anywhere from $300, $400, maybe $500 for a new processor, this processor does not come cheap. I mean, price to performance, there's still an argument to be made for that, but if you're looking for the best of the best, $1,800 for the privilege. And they said that they were accidentally listed on AMD's France website ahead of time, and the company compares itself to the Intel's Core i9-7980XE. So, and also, by the way, that is their top of the top, tippy top, best of the best, and even Intel has that one listed for $2,000 flat, like, maybe $1,999, whatever, but $2,000, whereas this is $1,800, so $200 less expensive. So the rest of the computer consisted of a GeForce GTX 1080 graphics card, 32 gigs of DDR4 3200 RAM, Windows 10, and of course Samsung 850 Pro SD, which should be, if I'm not mistaken, an M.3 SSD. So there's your system, and all they had to do was just rip out the Threadripper, put in the Intel, or at least build two systems with the exact same specs except for the processor. And they said that Intel's chip may still have the edge over Threadripper 2 when it comes to gaming performance, but that's unlikely to be a concern among professionals who buy these very expensive processors for their multi-threaded performance. That's right. So a key thing to note, these processors that we're talking about, from the Threadripper to the Intel i9-7980 chips, things like that, as much as you like them for gaming and you think that any kind of prosumer, enthusiast kind of processor would be just for gaming, no, these are workstations. These are stations that are meant to encode videos or to render graphics and things like that, for a graphic artist or, a movie professional, someone who does something very workload graphic intensive. Video games only take you so far. So with that being said, keep that in mind. But yeah, they're talking about the workload that they would generally be put under that would utilize as many cores and threads as possible. Gaming just doesn't do that. Many video games are optimized for 4-core, maybe even 8-core or 8-thread, at the very most. And if you have 64, that's a lot of processes, that's a lot of cores and threads sitting around doing nothing. Not many people, other than, again, professionals, are going to look at these and say, well, what's the best? But if you are in that category and you are looking for what's going to save you the most time, because you know what they say, time is money. And yeah, if you're looking to save some time, looks like AMD ThreadRipper could be just for you. So they said that it starts at a base clock speed of about 3 gigahertz. Wasn't too bad. Turbo clock to about 4 gigahertz. Or I'm sorry, 4.2. So that is kind of the reason why Intel would still have the gaming edge. Each one of the cores, each one of the threads will have a maximum speed of 4.2 gigahertz. Pretty good, don't get me wrong. Pretty darn good, will get you where you're going very, very fast, especially if you're using a lot of those threads. But if you are using a game or you're playing a game that only utilizes 3 or 4, then you're going to want something that's closer to 5 gigahertz as opposed to 4.2, just so everything, kind of goes faster. So they said with the now deleted the now deleted post from AMD France's website, they have, kind of a quote here, but we'll go ahead and sum it up with the last line saying that the Intel Core i9-7980XE earned 3,335 points on achieving the benchmark, while the AMD Ryzen ThreadRipper achieved 5,099 on average. So they said with that, you get a 53% performance boost over Intel's offering. So obviously the two are, and I did this article because obviously AMD is going to have an advantage in some ways. And in one of those ways is that Intel is really lacking in is this idea that people want a lot of cores, a lot of threads, and they're going to be running very processor intensive processes. And that's where AMD is going to shine. Does AMD beat Intel at every category? No. You are looking at a piece of the entire spectrum of uses for processors. And in this one, AMD just happens to come out ahead. Obviously, if AMD writes a post on their website, they're going to infinitely play up and highlight, accentuate, feature their performance boost over Intel. If you were to change this around a little bit and, go for, again, pro gamers, or if you were looking for, very specific use cases, because this is exactly what it is. You get this 53% speed boost in a very specific use case. Intel can do the same thing. Intel can put out numbers, put out benchmarks and tests that will show that AMD just can't compete with Intel. So, and expect to see those. Intel is going to highlight their strengths. They're going to really put forward their best foot. But just know that if you are looking for, if you're going to be rendering a lot of photos or videos, or you're going to be, doing things like that, maybe AMD is the one to check out. If you are just using it as a quote unquote general purpose computer, a lot of gaming, a lot of, maybe heavy workloads, maybe Intel is going to be better off for you either way. But yeah, I'm still excited because when AMD does something like this, it pushes Intel to make up ground, because Intel does not want to concede any part of the processor market share to AMD. That Intel does not want to pull out and say, hey, we just can't compete when it comes to Intel's multi-processor, multi-threaded performance. So good job, AMD. Intel is, Intel quits. That's never going to happen. So I'm happy AMD is doing it. They're giving Intel a run for their money. And I think, hey, maybe next year's offerings, Intel's going to set up Tech Notice and say, all right, we need to get competitive in this area once again. But there you have it, and I'm sure more of these benchmarks will come out. If you are really a numbers guru, then wait until it comes out into people's systems. But in certain conditions, again, to summarize the article, AMD ThreadRipper is 50% faster than Intel's Core i9. So pretty darn cool. And again, definitely enjoy stories such as those. So let's go from something numbery, techie, that kind of deal, to something a little bit more, makes you mad, makes you angry, a nice visceral reaction for your morning. Or, wow, what time is it? Yep, afternoon, who knew? So this is a story from CNN Money talking about Wells Fargo says that hundreds of customers lost homes after a computer glitch. So you may remember at the beginning of the show, I said computer hack. I'm used to these things happening from outside forces, but this, no, is not the case. This was just poorly audited software that led to people actually being evicted and foreclosed on their houses, which is a horrible thing to do. Even more so, the fact that it was at the fault of shoddy software. So, and this is actually something, we can broaden the conversation to not just Wells Fargo, but many, many companies across the internet, that they don't have good systems in place for a human to talk to a human and reach a resolution. Because in so many cases, the people on the other end of the line for businesses simply are talking mouths for the data shown on a computer screen and don't have actual influence over the situation that they're conversing over. So let's talk about this one. Happened yesterday, as far as I can remember. And yeah, Wells Fargo says hundreds of customers lost their homes after a computer glitch. CNN Money, Jackie Waddles, talking about the embattled bank reveals the issue in a regulatory filing this week and said that it had set aside $8 million to compensate customers by the glitch. So $8 million, that's... I'm sure that the bank reached that number by adding up the cost of everyone's mortgage that they foreclosed on, and they're going to, kind of reimburse and make everything right, hopefully. But I don't think this problem's going to go away as soon as they pay people back. But the same filing also disclosed that Wells Fargo is facing formal and informal inquiries or investigations from unnamed government agencies over how the company purchased federal low-income housing tax credits. The document states that the probes are linked to the financing of low-income housing developments, but does not offer further details. That would be why they were called at the beginning of the article embattled, I would suppose. So Reuters first reported on the news of the investigation and the mishandling of the mortgages. So we're going to head on over to the Reuters article. But yeah, they said that, and by the way, this came out on Friday. So yeah, just to be clear. So they said that the new disclosure adds to Wells Fargo's numerous penalties, private lawsuits, and remediation efforts, and most stem from a sales practice scandals that has touched all of the bank's major business units. If I recall correctly, Wells Fargo was the one who, they had to fire like 1,000 or so, thousands if not hundreds, or at least hundreds if not thousands of sales personnel who were kind of encouraged to do or sign people up for, loans and credit cards and other things that they really didn't want, but they were coerced into by the sales team. So they said that the $8 million accrual is intended for roughly 625 borrowers who should have qualified for a loan modification under a program the Treasury Department set up in 2009 to help Americans who were struggling to make mortgage payments. I remember that well, 2009, rough economic time, and it looks like the system for Wells Fargo did not approve them when they should have. So, an error in Wells Fargo's underwriting tool improperly excluded those borrowers, 400 of whom eventually had their homes foreclosed upon. That is just the worst. So, the bank also updated disclosures on issues it had discovered in auto lending, wealth management, fiduciary, there we go, and custody accounts, foreign exchange trading, mortgage rate lock extension add-ons, products like identity theft protection, and frozen closed bank accounts. So, man, every part of Wells Fargo seems to be under scrutiny for poor, just kind of poor management of their software. So we're gonna leave it there, and of course we're gonna keep on it, follow up on it, see what happens to these people if they get their homes back, or they receive a loan that they should have, a decade ago at this point. But just to go to show that, and as I said at the very beginning of this article, there was another article that we are not going to cover, but essentially it was about AT&T having the same problem, that customer service is not customer service at this point. A lot of these large companies, and you can include telecoms, banks, maybe even social media to an extent, they don't have customer service to really remediate problems. They have customer service to mitigate the damages caused by shutting down or outsourcing customer service. They don't really value you as a customer. They expect you as a customer, but they don't value you as a customer. Rather, they're looking to really do as little action as they can, because if anything more needs to happen, that's effort on their part, that's staff that they need to hire, that's work hours that they need to pay for. And if they can get you to walk away from a larger problem, that's something that they are more than happy to do. Be that, again, a bank, a telecom company, anything that they can get away with a phone tree and, just someone who is not properly trained or even given permission to handle your problem. So we're seeing it more and more, and hey, we're going to leave that one there. So Wells Fargo, all right, so this is a policy that is a follow-up to an issue that happened a number of months ago. So this is from the Associated Press, Business Insider, and talking about the Pentagon just banned troops from wearing fitness trackers in war zones and on secret bases. You'd think something as common sense that this would already be in place, but this is probably after the data. And this is one of the funny parts. The data wasn't even leaked. So there was a fitness tracking service, pretty popular, used either the phone's GPS or their own hardware. I do not recall which one exactly it was, but they had a live heat map. And trust me, heat maps, they are a great way to show how people are, kind of moving, and it's a very interesting graphic. You can tell a lot from it. And, in the United States, it showed a lot of major cities, had a lot of people walking, jogging. It doesn't matter. A lot of fitness data was coming in from Europe, America, parts of Canada, Southeast Asia, places like that. The interesting part, though, was that obviously a lot of places in Africa and the Middle East do not have a lot of fitness trackers because, well, they don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the infrastructure for internet, and they, in a lot of cases, just don't have the resources to invest in something as frivolous as a fitness tracker. Yes, I use the word frivolous, but you get my point. Except for a couple of places. And again, this is what happened months ago, but places such as Afghanistan, admittedly, not a lot of infrastructure, not a lot of places people are going to go on morning walks every single day. Well, there were a few places in these large, dark swaths of land that were showing up like Christmas lights. They were bright, they were well traveled, and they looked like something. They looked like a literal floor plan. The heat map showed tracks, showed hallways, even showed rooms where data was coming in from these personal fitness trackers that the soldiers were using. So obviously they want to stay in the best shape that they can. Fitness trackers are not unknown here in the United States. But the data that was available to everyone through this heat map were showing the locations and floor plans of sensitive, classified, and sometimes top secret military bases. And while it didn't show what was going on there or anything like that, it at least gave people a look at the at the amount of traffic, at the layout, and of course that data could then be used for nefarious purposes by the enemies of the United States. So, in response, we now have this policy that bans it in war zones and secret bases. Who knew? Strapping a plastic GPS unit to your wrist would convey information about what you do, where you go, and why that would be a bad thing in top secret military infrastructure. Who knew? So the memo stopped short of banning the fitness trackers or other electronic devices, which are often linked with cell phone applications that can provide users GPS details and social media. It says that technologies on personal or government-issued devices that can pinpoint a person's location presents a significant risk to military personnel, so those capabilities must be turned off in certain operational areas. So, the military leaders will determine if their troops can use the GPS function based on the security threat in the region. Obviously, if you are in a base in the United States, that is something completely different than if you are, on the front lines and you don't want your enemies to know where you are. It's, so far I have not heard of any casualties coming from wearing one of these and then, anyone using it to pinpoint a location to bomb or anything like that. But that's what they're worried about. They want to keep things as secretive and hidden as they possibly can. And fitness trackers are the exact opposite of that, or at least the capabilities that they have are the opposite of that. So they didn't ban them, but they did say that you had to ask your superior officer if you were even allowed to use them. So just as good. All right. There's that one. I have no doubt why that was put into place. That's not draconian. That's just good common sense and, something. And by the way, the service, I believe, that I was talking about was called Strava, Strava. And they even have a global heat map to kind of show. So if you're watching the video portion, you can kind of see it here. Again, the United States lit up like crazy. You can see the major streets and things like that. Large parts of Africa, not a lot going on. But then you see these little blips, these little highlights in places where, you wouldn't think you'd see anything. And again, if you're watching the video portion, you see what appears to be about 16 pixels. Those little pixels used to be really, really high quality and very accurate. And since then, I'm sure that the military has contacted them, asking them to, not be so accurate when it comes to, specific locations. And it looks like that they've followed through with that. But in the meantime, the military is, of course, looking into it. So there you have it. Let's go ahead and get started on our next one. We're about to head off into break. And then when we come back, more computer and technology news. Let's, this heat map is really fun. But let's go ahead and talk about, All right, when we come back from break, which again will be in just a minute, let's talk about Android P. So Android P, code name for the next iteration of the Android operating system for smartphones. Most popular operating system by far. Of course, iOS and Apple, they're the largest single iteration of an operating system because most every iOS device runs the same operating system. But as far as Android goes, if you take all the pieces of Android and add them together, Android is the most popular, but it's always a struggle to get Android users to upgrade to the latest iteration. So when we come back, we're going to talk about Android P, what it's about, its features, its upgrades, and if you should bother updating to Android Pie. So everyone, Computer America, more right after this. Everyone, stay tuned.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 32 minutes past the hour as we continue on. And we are about to get into the story about Android P, Android Pie, what it is, and if you need to pay attention to it. So real quick, if you missed any part of today's program, feel free to head on over to computeramerica.com or wherever podcasts are heard, and you can find Computer America in its entirety rebroadcast on places such as iTunes, Google Play Store, iHeartRadio, and more. If you've been paying attention to tech news lately, you may have heard not every show gets to do that now. But we sure do. Computer America, happy to be on there, and of course, looking forward to you listening. But really, any way that you enjoy Computer America, either listening to us live on IRN, or the podcast version, or joining us and watching us on video, any and all are the best way. So let's go ahead and get started about Android P. So this first article is from Engadget, Mariella Moon. March 14th will never be the same again, apparently. So March 14th would be Pi Day, 3.14, if none of you got that. But they said that the P in Android 9.0 stands for Pi, and it has officially arrived. You'll get an over-the-air update for the new platform very, very soon if you have a Pixel, since it's rolling out to Google devices starting today. And if you have a non-Pixel phone, though, you'll likely have to wait a few more months to get the software upgrade. So congratulations to anyone out there using a Google Pixel. you are beta testers. Not really. I'm sure it's good, but they said that Google says that the device that were part of Android P beta program and qualifying Android One devices should have the update by the end of fall. The tech giant says it's working with partner manufacturers to give more people access to the platform, and that most of them plan to roll out an Android 9 Pie to the devices before the year's end. So let's see. The new OS will add an iPhone-like swipe-based navigation system to your iPhone, so you can swipe up from anywhere to see full-screen previews of your most recent apps. It also comes with AI applications, including adaptive battery, which can save you some juice by switching off applications when you need them the least. Another feature is a predictive app system that can tell you what you want to do next. If you pull up Google Maps every morning, for instance, it will start suggesting the action in the future. So it knows what you do, and then it tries to predict what you are going to do. Obviously, if you're very unpredictable, the feature won't come up that much. But if you happen to do the same thing over and over again, then yeah, this may save you a couple of swipes, presses, strokes, whatever. So this fall, the platform will also include features called Slices, probably named that because it's Android Pie. And they said that it shows a slice of relevant information from your apps when the system believes you need it. Google will roll out the digital well-being apps it promised at the Google I/O starting this fall, and more. So let's see. I think we had another one. Yeah, here we go. So that one was from Engadget, this one from The Verge, and we're going to combine these two. By the way, this one is again The Verge. So we're going to combine these two because this shows, at least according to the author, the 5 best apps for Google Pie. And, we're not going to get into, every single word that he says, but here we go. So he said that this coming from the beta, anyone out there who used the beta should know these features, but the first one are app time limits. And again, these are all features coming to Android Pie. So they said that the biggest deal will be app time limits, where they're going to show you how much time you spend in every app. And more importantly, it's going to let you set limits on how long that you use them. You'll be able to limit yourself to a certain amount of time every day, so 15 minutes or an hour. And after that time, the app's icon will go gray, and when you try to use it, Android will not let you. Instead, a pop-up will tell you that you've hit your time limit. There won't even be a button to ignore it and let you open the app anyways. So they said that you'll be able to get back into the app if you really need to, but you'd have to go back into the settings and remove your time limit. So obviously, if you set limits for yourself, you're going to be able to unset limits for yourself, but this could help people who are really have a hard time managing their time on Facebook or Netflix or, any of these other apps. If you find yourself, losing hours a day, then maybe a little bit of discipline and pushing you in the right direction could help a lot of people. So they said that, so that's, again, according to the author, one of the key features, which I actually really like. I wish Apple had something like that. I'm sure that there are ways to block apps on your phone, but time limits are certainly a new take on it. They said that the next one will be fewer notifications, where they said that Google is trying to do even more in Android Pie to get them out of your face, where for one, it'll suggest muting an app's notifications if you keep swiping them away. But the even bigger thing now is a much beefier do not disturb. So if you don't know about do not disturb, then you need to switch that thing on every time you go to bed. It is a great way to really disconnect from your device. And yeah, they said that if you have the do not disturb, guess what? Notifications don't appear on screen at all. Because before, for a lot of operating systems, it would simply just show the notification, no vibration, no noise, no nothing, but it would still show the notification. So if you had your phone screen within eyesight, you would still notice that you would have something. Do Not Disturb actually blocks those all together. So pretty good feature, especially if, hey, if you have it on, let it do what it's supposed to do. All right. Next one, gesture navigation. If you are used to Apple, nothing new there. Screenshot editing. And this is something that Apple had as well. If you take a screenshot, you're going to be able to minimize, mark up, change, and otherwise edit any screenshot on your phone. Pretty useful, good feature. I like it. Let's see, smarter app search results, and either way, again, this is available for the Pixel 2 currently, and then within the next couple of months, the rest of the Android fleet should be getting the update as well. So there you go. There's Android P for Pie. Looks like it's some pretty good features, some good usability features, but overall, nothing truly game-changing, just some catching up and some tweaks. So, all right. Let's see. Let's talk about... There's a couple cool stories here that I really want to get to. And so this is a rumor that has been floating around the internet for a little while. We should probably address it. And it has a lot of people worried. Because when you talk about Windows 10, most people are running it. Not a lot of people stuck with Windows 8 or 8.1. Windows 7 is still pretty popular, but because there was an upgrade path to Windows 10 and Windows 10 received very, very good reviews, a lot of people upgraded from Windows 7 to Windows 10. I think it actually passed Windows XP as the most popular operating system. It's that popular. So there was, and this is an opinion piece from a website called How to Geek. They have a lot of great guides and a lot of great news and articles and things like that. Well, they wrote an opinion piece and it had a lot of great information into it. So I thought I would include it in today's show. And yeah, this has to do with the fact that, well, Windows as a service. It's what's known as Microsoft Managed Desktop, which is aka known as Windows as a Service. And a lot of people saw a press release revolving around this, that you were able to, quote unquote, rent a Windows operating system. And they jumped to the conclusion that, well, this is the next phase of Windows or Microsoft's plan, is to get everyone locked into Windows 10, and then they would pull the rug out from them. And if you want to continue using your desktop, your computer, everything that you've set up, then you want to subscribe to Microsoft. And there really wasn't an alternative. Of course, we talk about things like Linux, but to a lot of people out there, it would either be really, rapidly learn about an entirely new operating system, or pay the subscription service. So again, the rumors were flying around, just what exactly this would mean for the average customer, what exactly Windows was aiming this at, who it was for, what it would actually entail. All that was up in the air, but we've gotten some further clarification since it first reared its head. So this is an optional subscription service for businesses, and that's the key word, businesses, that includes a lease of a physical PC hardware, which happens to be running Windows 10. Those businesses aren't just paying for software. So if you have ever purchased Windows 10, you know that you do pay for the operating system. Windows 10 came around and it was pretty affordable compared to some of the other earlier iterations. I believe it's still like $70, $80 for, the best home one. But businesses had to get their own version that was actually pretty costly. And so what Microsoft is looking to do it's not looking to replace Windows. They're looking to get into the same game that Netflix and Hulu and name any other subscription-based services that you may subscribe to. And trust me, there are a lot of them out there. Microsoft wants to be that for businesses. To put it short, they said that Windows 10 Enterprise is looking to essentially, quote unquote, rent Windows PCs to their customers. So instead of large corporations, think corporations that need 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 computers to give to their employees so that they can do their business. Think those with entire fleets of PCs. This is not the individual with 1, 2, 3, or 4 computers out there. No, this is businesses with 100, 500, 1,000 or more. And instead of that business eating the cost of, and trust me, this is a huge problem for businesses. Instead of the business eating the cost of purchasing, let's just say 1,000 computers, buying 1,000 Windows licenses, paying IT staff to maintain, update, upgrade, troubleshoot those 1,000 computers, and then at the end of it all, throwing away 1,000 computers and buying completely new hardware at the end of it. That's a cycle that costs so much money. It actually leads to businesses avoiding some of the key steps, and that's why you have banks. That's why you have Fortune 500 companies falling behind when it comes to computer safety. Not having the latest operating system because, well, their current set of computers that they don't want to pay to upgrade just can't run them. This is a pretty obvious next step for Windows. Windows wants, or Microsoft wants Windows to be up to date all the time. And the best way to make sure that that happens is that the hardware that these companies are running can upgrade all the time. So continuing on with the article for a bit, and then we'll get it back into why this is actually a good thing for businesses, saying that it's just for business, but Microsoft plans to charge average Windows users a monthly fee for Windows 10 too. People have been worried about this ever since Windows 10 and the concept of Windows as a service was announced, and that if it's a service, surely Microsoft will start charging for it at some point. Think Office 365. As opposed to Microsoft Office, you get Office 365 for, X amount of dollars a month. Well, the author says he's not so sure, saying that right now, PC manufacturers pay Microsoft for Windows 10 licenses, and every time you buy a PC, Microsoft gets a cut from the manufacturer. And if you build your own PC, you have to buy a license. It's a system that's worked well for Microsoft. So he's saying that the alternative just doesn't make a lot of sense, saying that many people would abandon Windows PCs for surprisingly capable Chromebooks, while others would cling to Windows 7 for dear life, and Microsoft just can't afford to do this. So, yeah, again, in the consumer world, it doesn't make a lot of sense to do Windows 10 as a service. But, here we go. Let's go ahead and get back to the point of why this is a good optional service for businesses. Instead of businesses eating the cost of, again, maintaining, buying, selling, upgrading, all of that would be pushed off to Microsoft. And if Microsoft is able to do this in large enough numbers, then they can actually save a lot of money as opposed to corporation after corporation after corporation, because they have, the economics of numbers. They can work on a lot more systems a lot easier than each company individually. So if you wanted to pay Microsoft a certain amount, and don't get me wrong, in certain situations, it may make perfect sense to buy a Windows system, hire an IT staff to maintain it, and get rid of your fleet after X number of years. At a certain level, it may actually save you money to do this all in-house. But there's a lot of medium-sized businesses. I'm sure there's going to be price tiers for lower-end businesses that it will only make sense to rent a computer from Windows and then give it back at the end of your rental period, and you are out whatever you rented the money for, but you would have saved overall as opposed to, providing these services yourself. So they said that after all, and they said that if you don't like it, you can continue buying a box copy of the latest version of the operating system. But overall, the people worried that this is going to be, businesses today and consumers tomorrow, there's just too many variables for Windows to actually implement this into any kind of sustainable model that won't freak people out or drive people away from Windows. They have a very dominant grip on the personal computer marketplace. But if they start to act really draconian, technology has not been on their side. Microsoft is not the only one developing an operating system, and with enough incentive, with enough stick beatings, guess what? People will go elsewhere. So Microsoft not looking to bring Windows as a service to consumers, but for businesses, I think this is actually a very cool idea. We've talked about a system very similar to this when it came to cars, as opposed to every family owning a car. Instead, you get access to a network of a fleet of cars that are maintained by the company. That makes, and we're talking about larger systems. Instead of 1,000 families owning 1,000 different cars, the same work can be done by 100 cars being available to 1,000 families whenever they need them, and all of them being maintained. So it's a system. It's been proven to work. It can save people a lot of money, and still, still waiting to see some price points, but may prove to be very, very useful for a certain clientele. Again, not consumers, and people or consumers will not be the ones who will be using Windows 10 as a service. All right, there's that one. Let's go ahead and talk about, this one's pretty cool. So while I don't play Dota 2, Defense of the Ancients 2, a game by Steam, or at least I should rather say Valve, pretty complicated. Still one of the most competitive games out there, right next to League of Legends, if you follow that scene as well. But when it comes to bots, I've played a couple of bot games on League of Legends, which again I'm gonna kind of use interchangeably here, even though the story is about Dota 2. Bots were only able to keep up with individuals when it came to kind of giving automated programs that would control character just like a human would. The only time that they would be competitive were when the bots were wildly overpowered. They were given special advantages that the human characters just weren't. That's where you run into this article, and this, yes, it does involve Elon Musk a little bit, but they said about a month and a half ago, OpenAI showed off the latest iteration of Dota 2 bots, which had matured to the point of playing and winning a full 5-on-5 game against human opponents, and that those artificial intelligence agents learned everything by themselves, exploring and experimenting on the complex Dota playing field at a rate of 180 years per day. So they were able to make a full 5v5 artificial intelligence team, pit them against each other, and not just kind of recreate situations where they would play the games themselves, but then they would make copies of themselves over and over and over and over and over and over again to the point where they were playing essentially 180 years of game time in a single day. That means that for you to get as good as these bots were, you would have to play 180 years every single day. Obviously, that's what it means. So today, though, the so-called OpenAI 5 truly earned their credibility by defeating a team of 4 pro players and 1 Dota 2 commentator in a best-of-3 series. Man, pretty darn cool. Because, and we've talked about how far artificial intelligence has come, machine learning, if you want to put another name to it. We covered it when chess became, the first chess-playing computer beat the world chess champion, when AlphaGo beat some of the best Go players in the world. And each time this happens, it's a level of complexity up. It's chess has a certain number of outcomes and moves and plays and probability. Checkers to chess, chess to Go, you are looking at infinitely more possible solutions. To the point where, take Go for instance, before it, we didn't think that a computer was going to beat a Go player for years yet. Because if you were going to brute force a computer into considering the best move out of 3 trillion possible outcomes, it was going to take that computer too long to figure it out, and it just wouldn't be viable. We have figured out a way around that, and now from Go, which is a board game, no way around it, but to go to a MOBA, a massive online battle arena, it's adding a level of strategy and reaction time and more that just shows that AI is getting really, really complex. So, of course, there were a few conditions to make the game manageable for the AI, such as a narrower pool of heroes, only 18 out of 100 plus, and an item delivery couriers that are invincible. Because, the computer could ask for an item, wait for the item, and if you were to kill the courier, then the computer would not, be able to get that item, and it would get stuck in a kind of rut. But they said but those simplifications did little to detract from just how impressive an achievement today's win was. Where the OpenAI team won against well-known Dota personalities, and all of them former professional players, alongside the current pro player, and all these names are right there. I don't follow the pro scene, unfortunately. But they sum up the despondency felt by the team human after the bout neatly, saying that, quote, "Never felt more useless in my life, but we're having fun at least, so I think we're winning in spirit. Sure aren't winning in game. So, yeah. For pro players who play this constantly and unendingly, for them to say that they feel powerless, that's quite an achievement. So the developers of OpenAI noted that OpenAI 5 were losing to amateur players within their team back in May, and by June, AI had matured enough to defeat casual players, and now it's capable of overwhelming people who've been playing Dota 2 literally since its inception. So the next goal for the rapidly evolving AI is to take the very best Dota 2 players, and that's where the best teams will compete for the grand prize of the 2018 Dota 2 Championship, and one of the sideshows will be a contest between them and OpenAI 5. Why this matters? First of all, obviously AI that is improving. We talk about AI in video games. That's something. But, extrapolate that to AI that are able to read situations, expect what they're going to do, make decisions with incomplete information, and just otherwise adapt to situations on a moment-to-moment basis, and apply that AI to self-driving cars, apply it to any kind of navigation software, apply it to the stock market where AI is going to be, processing information to then make informed buying decisions. That's where it's really cool. But the other part, which I'm kind of excited for, is what happens when esports, the idea that video games are a type of sporting event, what happens when those are taken over completely instead of human versus human, but by AI versus AI team? Is that even fair? Is that fun to watch? Who knows, but it's a possibility. In the meantime, the music means that we are just about wrapped up here. Everyone, thank you for joining us so much for for having Computer America on today. If you are listening to us live on IRN, if you are watching the video portion or listening to the podcast, you are all the best, and we thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to catch us tomorrow. Should be Gamer Tuesday, and everyone, looking forward to it. Until next time, everyone, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. Have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.